Morning. I'd like to call the Executive Committee meeting Tuesday, April 23rd to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mr. Washington.
Present.
Mr. Lejes. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mr. Byrne.
Present.
Ms. Weber.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Ms. Haas.
Present.
Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Alrighty, I have no slips for public comment this morning. Yes, sir.
Anybody know?
I have not heard from Mr. Lejes.
Okay.
To be honest, I haven't heard.
There was just something on Facebook that said that he's got some issues, and I just wondered if he's okay. So,
Yeah, you know what? I'll give him a call after my meetings today. I haven't heard. I wondered if he had like a cold or the flu. I just haven't seen him. I don't know what's going on with him. So, has anyone else heard anything? No. Okay. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, please. Thank you, Lori Gatboy is in the back. Thank you, Lori.
Mr. Lejes actually had to have a surgical procedure, which is taking a little longer for his recuperation, and so he is probably going to be absent maybe a few more days.
Okay.
I know today he had a follow-up with his doctor.
Okay. Thanks for that. Moving on, approval of the minutes, March 26, 2019. Can I get a motion to approve? Mr. Byrne, second. Mr. Washington. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're moving some things around today because I've got to be able to leave here to go to a meeting with the governor and Department of Transportation, Commerce. We're all getting together to go tour CSL and meet beforehand. So I just wanted to apologize for that, and you're gonna have to deal with Mr. Seroy for the last half of the meeting. I know. So, accordingly, anybody else want to take a shot at Todd? We can do that before we go. No, the other things on the agenda are important, but this one we needed to get through. There is some complexity to it. I want to leave room for questions, but these are the agreements. They're in your packet, and actually we're just handed the updated final draft from IDOT District 3 on the letter of understanding. These are the two documents. One is kind of in its final form, as I mentioned, the letter of understanding. That's the second item here. The first item is the tentative, joint agreement that we would have with CSL. And so Mark Rogers is here, Graham is here. We've been working on this over the, I don't know, week and a half, roughly. It's been like drinking from a fire hose. It's been, a lot has been flying around the last week and a half trying to get this done. And so once the process is done on the permit, which you would allow me hopefully to sign that, it gets the permit coming towards us in our hands. And then when we complete the agreement with CSL, and Mark will explain some of that on what we're talking about, and Graham will be here to answer questions, then that would allow me, once the full board approves this, then we can transfer that permit right into CSL's. Basically, it's our permit, but it would give them the opportunity to start building. And they're telling me it's a very fast timeline to completion of that entrance. So my goal, and I don't know if we're gonna hit it, is so it's done before Bears Camp. Because I think everybody, including the people that want to come to Bears Camp, would love to see that happen. The employees would love to see that happen. I think everybody in that area. So, and again, that's the first domino that would fall on a lot of different things. So, that being said, I don't know, do you want to join me up here, Mark, to kind of go through some of this? I know you like the camera. So, and Graham, it's up to you too if you want to take the mic back there. Okay. All right. And again, we're going to run through this as fast or as slow as you want to move on this stuff, and we could start with, why don't we start with the new letter of understanding? That'd be the first thing I think.
Is that in the packet, Sam?
I'm sorry?
Do I have that?
Yes, they have the new version that just showed up this morning. Yeah, the new one that we just handed out. So, and you're on that mic. So basically what this allows us to do And I tell you what, Mark, why don't you tell them the details on that?
The Department of Transportation has to issue the permit to a public agency. So the county has agreed to be the lead, and so the county is going to have to be the permittee. So the Illinois Department of Transportation is going to issue the building permit or the construction permit to the county. So we have to agree to certain specifications, which is expressed in this letter of, we have to sign this letter of understanding about that permit. Basically that we're gonna be the lead, that that the county is gonna have to maintain anything that the state doesn't maintain, which after this improvement is done, they're gonna maintain the turn lanes, the curb and gutter, and that's it. Other than that, we have to maintain everything, the traffic signals, the multi-use path, the sidewalks, snow plowing, not snow plowing, but snow removal of the multi-use path, maintain the landscaping and all that. So we have agreed to that in this letter of understanding.
So, Mr. Kinzinger, we'll start off there.
Is the maintenance of the multi-path that they're talking about, is that consistent with the work that was done north of this improvement?
They have not, CSL is actually, that's part of the second agreement. They're gonna pay for the multi-use path. So they're picking, and the maintenance of that.
Is
And
that-
all, that's that part of the second agreement that we have to do with CSL. So
Is that on the IDOT right of way or off the right of way?
It's proposed to be on the right of way.
So we have to agree to maintain it, because what if CSL decides to pack up and, move to another area of the world?
And my question still is, there is a multi-use path north of Armour Road. Who's responsible for that maintenance?
I believe that's Bradley, is it not? Yeah, Lori nods yes.
Bradley's
it's
doing
Bradley.
that?
Village of
Yeah.
Bradley.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Question answered.
Mr. Hess?
Question. Thank you, Chairman. Should we make a motion on this before we get into all this discussion?
Sure. Would you?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, Mr. Hess, and a second, Mr. Olthoff on this, and this will be specifically on
The second one.
the letter of understanding and permit for Illinois 50. Okay, moving on, more discussion. Mr. Byrne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding is, should this project progress, it would be done sometime by the end of July.
That, it's not completely our timeline. CSL is paying for the construction, the traffic light, the multi-use path, all of that. So I think they're vested in getting this, and they're moving quickly.
Yeah.
They've given me a couple of really short timelines, so that's what we're all shooting for.
Great.
We don't have a crystal ball, but, so, and again, when we have this road use agreement, it allows us to move forward on the permit. And then once that permit shows up, then I'm able to take that with the other agreement that hopefully you'll allow me to sign with CSL. And then we can wrap that up, basically.
Excellent.
So. Now, if you read, do you want to take a moment to read through if there's any questions? Because I want to make sure everybody's clear on, what our obligations are. And how some of those obligations would transfer with a separate agreement to CSL. Mr. Lear.
Do we have other places where we're maintaining traffic signals, or do we have people that have those kind of responsibilities?
Yes, the county of Kankakee right now, the highway department is responsible for the signals at like St. George Road and Route 50. So we get the electric bill. We have to hire Outson to go out and do repairs, maintenance, whatever has to be done, and yes, we do pay for that.
So,
One thing also is that we will be taking all four legs of that four-way. That will go to us. The three legs were with Bradley, and all four will come to the county once the new leg of that traffic light is brought in. And so we were estimating a little bit on electricity. I mean, it's a guesstimate right now, but it's less than you would think.
It's about $250 a year for energy, and maintenance just depends on what has to happen with it during the year.
Yeah, Mr. Olthoff.
Thank you, Chairman. The north entrance of CSL, will that be closed?
Their intent at this point is to not close that.
Not close it.
Part of the next project that we're talking about, the one that's in the capital bill, addresses that. They're two separate projects, but they will depend on each other to function.
Will that just be used for, truck delivery or something like that, not for exit
Truck
from-
deliveries going all the way down by almost the Vips parking
I-
lot. That's where all the trucks will go from now on.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what will that north entrance be used for? Will it be limited?
It will not be limited, but what they're part of the geometry of the new design is they're timing those stoplights. So there'll be a green light that comes out of CSL, and that's what's in the capital bill, is to widen all that and make that, it's a green light, and then the light at 50 will be green also. So it won't be like the Indy 500 trying to get in the left lane coming out of there. You'll just flow right out.
There's a proposed traffic signal at that intersection at
that's-
Denny's and.
Yeah.
and
We're in
CSL.
charge of that one too?
CSL has expressed interest in paying for that as well.
Okay.
So that, again, that's the next project.
Yes, all right.
But again, they have a vested interest in making that work as well. Because really, it's 1,600 employees on top of the 1,600 they have now roughly. They're gonna need both. They're gonna need both. So. The turn lane's gonna help as well. They're building a turn lane on their own dime to turn into that facility. So that'll help relieve some of the traffic. Mr. Byrne?
Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you can answer this question. Now, when the proposed roadway does go in, will that also go west to connect with the road that goes behind, like the baseball fields and Turks, or what used to be Turks? Because there is a road out in the back there. Will that connect for people to get out that way?
I've not seen any plans that connects it to, I think it's industrial.
Industrial, okay, that's.
Yeah, I've
neither
not
have I.
seen any plans for that.
Okay, I
All
wasn't
that I've
sure.
seen is the plans for the intersection improvement.
Okay.
I haven't noted that on any plans I've seen, but that doesn't mean it won't have it down the road.
Okay.
No pun intended, yeah. Mr. Hess?
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, is there wiring already on the east side of 50 for this?
There is you mean at the Lowe's entrance? This
Right.
is at the Lowe's entrance.
Yeah.
So there is an existing traffic signal there with a cabinet that runs the traffic signal, so it should be just
So
some
there
modification.
shouldn't be any disruption at all on tearing up 50 or anything like that?
Oh, there'll be disruption because they're gonna be adding
Well,
they're
I
gonna be
meant
adding a
like-
southbound turn lane.
But I
To
meant
50.
like going across all 4 lanes or anything like that?
Should not be.
Good.
So any more questions about that agreement? That one's pretty cut and dry. That's what it is with the state. That puts the onus on us, and then some of that would be transferred over to CSL, a vast majority of it. So the thing to note is that really, all we're in for at this point is the cost of the electricity on that corner on this traffic light, and I think we can afford to subsidize $250 on this expansion, I would hope.
And just to supplement that,
Well, we're not a transfer agency because they're a private company, but yeah. But we always, again, we will assume that for the future because IDOT doesn't do deals with private companies. They don't issue permits to private companies. They issue them to us. So part of our covenants is if they leave, then, what happens, we're addressing that in the other agreement, That's important to us and important to CSL.
just
Grant?
to piggyback off of the chairman's comments there, also in paragraph 4 of the letter, it does give us the right to enter into agreements with literally any entity to share costs or maintenance or any of the other issues that we're discussing today. It's not directly in place now, but it gives us the ability to.
Right. So any other questions on that? So we had a motion and a second. Just for that $250, we should probably do a roll call, I would say. That's probably a good idea. Per year.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff, Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, Ms. Haas, Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Alrighty, moving on to part B of this would be the joint agreement that is in your packet with CSL. I don't know if you wanted to take a moment on that before we dive into it and kind of call out anything you see or have questions on. If you would like to hear the elegant description from Mr. Rogers on that.
Just to be clear about this agreement as
Mr.
you're going
Quinn.
through it, it is a draft. It hasn't been shown to CSL yet, so there is going to be some working that needs to be done with it, but
Right.
it should be bare bones correct.
We've
What
talked
the
about
thinking.
these things.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so this is the first draft for me to be able to sit after today, obviously.
Have
We're
that
gonna be kind of
conversation
busy.
with them, yeah.
to start hammering this out, because we want to do this as quick as possible to get the permit in our hands. So, Mr. Kinzinger.
I'd like to move that we accept this preliminary draft as presented.
Move.
Make the second.
And a second by
If I might add,
Mr. Byrne. Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger, would you be appropriately amending your motion to leave some flexibility? Because you said as drafted, and that means
yeah.
what's in front of you is what we got, so.
It is a draft, it's not the final document, so yes, I do accept.
Just want to leave that flexibility, I appreciate it.
How you wanna say that, necessary,
With necessary changes.
Necessary changes as
Yeah.
approved by the state's attorney's office.
There you go,
Okay.
there it is.
Yes. That's why he makes the big bucks. We just didn't want to have to come back another month and have this
Yeah, we
meeting
don't
and
want-
then go to
we
the
wanna
full
keep moving
board, and then we
forward, right?
miss the construction season. That's why we're kind of saying, give us a little bit of leeway. And if there is something substantial, believe me,
Absolutely, we have to
Yeah.
come back for that.
that's
yeah.
why the permit won't transfer until this is executed. That's where our, say, leverage is in the negotiation, if you will. So, because we're the ones getting the permit. I foresee no issues, to be honest. I mean, everybody wants to see this happen, so. Any other questions? Make sure. Okay, we have a motion and a second. A roll call, please.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff,
Aye.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Miss Weber, Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Miss Haas, Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you both for your work. I appreciate it, Mark, Graham. It's been a whirlwind getting this together. Under legislative, Mr. Lear, did you have some things you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to call attention to the newsletter that UCCI put out in conjunction with the National Association of Counties. They called attention to the fact that April is County Government Month, and I think that as we look ahead to 2020, we may want to have a resolution that promotes the services and the activities that are provided by county government. We can get a lot of assistance from NACO and from UCCI on doing that kind of promotion. One of the things that is promoted during that month is the health department. There's a specific day that's designated during the month of April as County Health Day, and we could highlight services of the health department during that. I would also call attention to the fact that in July, UCCI has their a meeting at Eagle Ridge up in Galena, and they've opened registration for that now. So if you check your emails, you should have gotten an email from UCCI in regard to the July meeting at Eagle Ridge. And I would urge everyone to consider that, as that is always a highlight meeting of the year for UCCI.
Okay. I do have a question. We have a special guest with us today. It's Dr. Greg Murphy from ICANN, Regional Superintendent. Put him on the spot. Do you think this is something that kids in school would want to learn about, what county governments do? To have maybe the board members come out and talk to them about, I know we don't want to interrupt the school day, but is this relevant to the education the kids are getting?
I think it fits right in with civics education and to allow students to see local government and the idea that Illinois is built on local control.
22nd, 23rd.
Many don't understand county government's role, and that could be an excellent opportunity.
Okay, all right. We're getting harassed by the producer that we're not speaking in the microphone. So to let everybody know, Dr. Murphy thinks it's a good idea. And so we do have some planning time. We're not springing this on you. But maybe we'll talk over the next 6 months and come up with a program and get, board member volunteers who want to go talk to the school kids about this. Mr. Byrne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past, I've spoken to a couple classes. They do talk about county government, like in the Bourbonnais Upper Grade Center. They have done it in the past, so
Okay.
it's rewarding. It's nice. Kids do get involved and ask a lot of questions.
Okay. They ask about
Yes, I did.
Cupcakes?
A lot of cupcake
Okay.
talks. Yeah, I sprinkled knowledge.
There you go. There you go. Mr. Lear, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the date for that UCCI event is July 22nd and 23rd. If people want to note that on their calendars.
Okay. And you are one of our representatives to ICANN, correct?
Yes.
Maybe you guys continue that conversation with their board to see how we might want to do this. Maybe we pull in Iroquois County and see if they want to do it as well. All right, and we'll do all the heavy lifting. It's just a matter of keeping this going so we don't forget. Okay, thank you. Anything else legislatively?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. All right. Nothing under appointments, information services, Mr. Duval. Does anybody have anything for Kevin? He said if you have anything, he'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, steady she goes as far as IT. All right. Schools, Dr. Murphy. Nothing today? Okay. VAC, Karen Smatansky. You have anything for us today? Nope. County Administrators Report, Anita Speckman. You have a couple things.
Just Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did we want to do the monthly report from VAC?
It's a good, motion to approve the monthly report for VAC, and I save. Mr. Washington, second. Mr. Payton, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Same sign, motion carries. We don't have a report from schools this month, correct? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Couple things. First, on the staffing report. Actually, I was just looking at it again this morning. I kind of made some changes last minute yesterday afternoon, and my totals under new hires and terminations aren't correct. The +6 -6, it's actually +13 -13. It doesn't go to transition of headcount. That is due to some promotions within the sheriff's department. So if you look down in the sheriff's area, he had 3 lieutenants that he promoted to chief. So he went from 1 chief to 4 chiefs, and then 3 sergeants that he promoted from sergeant to lieutenants. In total, the head count doesn't change there. It's just promotion within his department of 6 people. So the head count totals remain the same. You can see we lost, in animal control, another person this month. They are down to 8 from their full staff of 11. So she's scrambling over there to try and get those filled. Those are really the only 2 things where we had many issues. 2 recent terminations with circuit clerk, and the addition in the state's attorney's office, the new hire there. I received an email late yesterday afternoon that person actually turned in their resignation. So next month they'll be out. And he'll be short yet one again. So, any questions? No? Okay. The second thing is the new or revised policy for identification badges. I've been working with the chairman and Wes Andrews on the new swipe card entry on the west door to the building. And we're working on having our identification badges also function as swipe access during off hours. The building obviously will be open as it is now during normal working hours, but if an employee comes in early or stays late for meetings, they'll use that for swipe access during certain times. For all the employees in the administration building, we've made a list. They'll all now be having identification badges. We're working with Trent Bukowski at the Sheriff's Department to get those issued with the proper access. We worked with all the department heads and elected officials to assign that as they see fit. So that is all finished. We're looking at a tentative turnover date to go from keys to the swipe access at this point about May 15th, if everything gets taken care of where it is, all lined up where it is. We need the badges all issued by then. We've got lanyards on order, and I think that's it. So that's kind of been a work in progress to get that all laid out with the right access so that people can get in the building and to their areas as see fit. Then the last piece is correction of our identification badge policy. If you remember from last summer when we redid the entire policy manual, this one was kind of left out there as not current. We didn't require badges. We are now going to be requiring badges, so that is reflected. And then everything in red is what the changes were. We haven't historically asked for badges, visitor badges. So those pieces I took out and just changed it to it's the responsibility of a department head to make sure that any visitors, they remain in the appropriate area. We don't really have a check-in desk downstairs where we would track exactly who's in and who's got a visitor badge, so we did change that. So we would be looking to approve this with any changes you see fit before we take that to the full board.
Yeah, accordingly, we met with the department heads. You know, they understand it's mainly affects this building, obviously. So that one door, and one of the goals was to, well, first was to reduce the amount of keys that were floating around for when people leave our employment or lose them or things like that. We can just, it's easier to turn off a card than it is to find a lost key and rekey everything. The second thing would be to at some point have this integrated with a swipe system that would allow people to clock in and clock out, which would take a lot of the manual effort away from our payroll system. So get this done first, and then as we talked about in building and grounds, Mr. Kinzinger, was to have this work, and there is an indication that this technology will work with swipe systems. We checked before we went down that road. No guarantees what's going to be in a year from now when we can do this, but at least we made that due diligence to do that. Did you have a question though? Yeah.
This policy and procedures change, has that been run by the department head, or is this the first time it's being seen?
Yeah, they've seen it. It was distributed at the department head meeting last Friday.
Very good. I move we accept.
Okay, well, we have a motion for Mr. Kinzinger to accept. Second, Ms. Weber. Any other questions about this? Oh, Mrs. Weber.
I just was thinking I was an employee.
Yes, and actually I do have, just for any county board member that wants a badge, all you really need to do is send me your photo. If you want to email me your photo behind a white background, and then we'll have I'll send it out to Trent and we'll get you a badge made. We can have those either with access or without. Mm-hmm. So if you happen to be a board member who comes in early before meetings, we have some of those, and you would like access, our standard access times are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And really you would use it between 7 and 8 in the morning, and then between 4:30 and 5. Mm-hmm. That's really the only time that door ends up locked, that if you're entering the building those times you would want to use your badge, mm-hmm. your swipe badge to do so. But if you would like access, either one, just an identification badge, and number two, an identification badge with access of 7 to 5, let me know that and I'll work with the Sheriff's Department. We'll get that all set up for you.
But you would encourage us to wear those.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If you like, yeah. I mean, this policy says that they need to be displayed.
I just think for safety of the people in the building, we need to identify ourselves.
Well, and the comments during the administration meeting were exactly that it used to be everybody knew who everybody was in this building, and with turnover, etc., it's just not that way anymore. So it is a security measure, so everybody's aware of who the employees are and who is not.
And just so you know, the next step we will probably take is to put a swipe on the administration office, so those keys can be collected. Because believe it or not, those are the biggest problems are county board members. I hate to say it. They're trying to get the keys back from those when they don't run again, or I mean, it's a problem. And then they got the key to administration out there floating around.
I didn't say that.
Hey, there's mirrors in our house, so we want to just make sure that that's the next step will be for us to have swipes to go in. Other
Right.
offices will have those as they go. So I recommend the access one for a county board member,
I
just
see.
not to get your picture on a card.
Okay.
I recommend access.
Yeah,
Mr.
that-
Olthoff
oh.
first and then Mr. Kinzinger.
You also need those for the courthouse for county board members too, right?
Mhm.
To get
Yeah.
through with a cell phone or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Is this a requirement for county board members to wear a tag every time they come in here?
No, it has been, but it hasn't been. Let's just say this was a policy on the books that nobody was adhering to for the
Right.
reasons that Anita stated. It was one of those dormant ones that we found when we were redoing the policy book that said, we're gonna have to address this, and then necessity meant that we address it now.
So this policy before me, do we start wearing badges as county board members?
We should, and that's the policy, just when you're in here.
Can I rescind my motion?
You can have the glasses with the fake nose and the mustache. Let me go to Mr. Lear first and then you, Ms. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a November evening meeting scheduled, so that's one thing in terms of access we'll have to think about.
The question will be, one, if that meeting is held in this building or not, but number two, when there are public meetings, that front door has to be open.
Right. Yep. Mrs. Weber.
It's a part, the last thing, G, is still there, always there, you just took part of it out of it.
Correct.
It says the word may.
Correct.
May send somebody home.
Right.
That would be on the employee's time,
Right.
right?
Well, I mean, and again, I don't like to get into mandates within these policies. Every department head needs to manage their department as they see fit. If you have somebody, and we talked about this last Friday in the meeting, if you have somebody who's been here 6 years and they forgot their badge and they can get in, but if you have, that's one thing. If you have somebody that every 2 weeks or once a month keeps forgetting their badge, there's a different approach to that as a supervisor. I don't like us making a rule that a department head, they can manage their own team and determine what works.
And really, the electeds can do that anyway. They don't have to
Correct.
subscribe to this, but I think they all want to have this down on paper.
I hope so.
Yeah. And so does the sheriff for security
I hope
reasons.
so, yeah.
If people come in here for, God forbid, some reason that they're a little more in tune with what's going on, let's just say it'd be nice to see who the employees are and who the non-employees are. Yeah. So, any other questions? We did have a motion in a second? And let's do a roll call just because we are spending money for a badge.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff, Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Ms. Weber,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, Ms. Haas, Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler,
Aye.
motion carries.
I did want to stress the photo. Have somebody grab your cell phone.
Right.
Put your back up against a white wall and have them take the picture. You'd have to go to the mic, yeah. And then Anita will send those all over to Trent.
Right.
So that just has to be against a white wall. That's the only stipulation that Trent had to produce them. Yes.
I'd just like to, is it on? Yeah. I'd just like to volunteer if anybody that's here. We have a white wall where we take veterans pictures with a light that shines down on the wall. If anybody wants to stop in and get their picture on their way out, you're more than welcome to.
Thanks. Yeah, makeup for Jim. He's powder that a little bit. Yeah, I will not get that out of my head now that you said that. I'm sorry.
all day with the government.
Oh, my word.
Oh, motion to adjourn, please. Mr. Hess, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. If the employee wants to get a second one, like sometimes I'm coming away or coming through and I stop by to get my mail, and my badge might be at home, something I could carry in my vehicle. It says in here, if you lose it, you can buy one for $10.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an option, or does it knock out both cards, or what? That's just a question.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. I don't think to have two cards floating around.
No.
But I'd have to talk to the sheriff. They would be best practices, or Trent. Because how would you know if one's missing until you go to find it and then it's missing? That's kind of what I'm thinking about, you know.
Just
But
thought I'd ask.
yeah, I defer to them, but I think I know the answer to that. But, yeah.
Okay,
So anything else, Anita? I'm sorry.
nope, that's all I had. Any other questions?
You want to foreshadow a little bit? Don't give them the answer, but tell them what's coming tomorrow as far as your analysis on IMRF.
IMRF, yeah, it's not good. Our rates go up next year. There's two pieces. Actually, IMRF had a loss on investment last year, which is disturbing. I just can't imagine. I'm kind of appalled. But that, plus the fact that, remember, they changed their assumption from 7.5% interest earnings to 7.25%. And so I'm going to redo my numbers this afternoon and look at those again. But at this point, I did hear from IMRF late yesterday, and they said their analysis is 75% of the increase in our rates is due to that change in assumption from 7.5% to 7.25%. So it's pushing more of that down to us at a county level. So
Us,
yeah, it's
taxpayers.
the taxpayers at a county level instead of, you know, their earnings performance, which is ridiculous. But we'll have kind of harder numbers of what that's going to mean to next year's levy. And with a tax cap, if it affects the, what I want to say, retirement fund,
Pension fund.
it's gonna roll in and put pressure elsewhere on all the other funds in terms of our levy for next year. So looking at those numbers is gonna be critical. Steve and I have been talking for the last month, but that it's not good.
We just, it's when I say a year off, if you will, but it's
Correct.
better to know now, and it's
Right.
not good. And we're not like a big county.
Right.
You could think of some of those big counties where they have thousands of employees. It's unbelievable what's going on. And so tomorrow, that's a teaser for tomorrow's
Yeah,
finance committee.
don't
meeting.
miss it. It'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Good news, sunshine. Thank you.
Mhm.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get ahead of this stuff instead of reacting to everything. We're finally in a position to where we can, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it'll get dim, a little bit dimmer once they just keep taking more and more of it down in Springfield. So unbelievable. All right, appointments and reappointments, resignations. In a moment, I'll take a motion to combine and approve. The appointment of Timothy J. Wilhelm. Yeah, yes, Mr. Lear.
I would like to remove the first one because I'm not sure, has that been, was that opening announced at any of our previous meetings? The letter you got was from April 12th.
Yeah, it was in response to the
Passing of,
them asking to appoint that Forest Preserve asking to appoint him. I guess I could wait, but I just don't know what that would do to their business.
the reason I'm asking is because I know I've got another person who was, spoke to me about an interest of being appointed. So it kind of complicates things, I know.
Yeah. Trying to think here. Mr. Quinn?
I don't see any issue with passing Mr. Wilhelm's appointment today. We can look into making sure it was announced properly previously, and for the county board, pull it if necessary.
Okay.
Just a food for thought there.
Yeah, if the date on the letter is such, because they reached out to me and saying, hey, we had our board member pass, we would like this person to take his place, and so I always respect the wishes of the commission that they're appointed to if they are trying to do that, but everybody should have the same opportunity to at least apply. So yeah, I mean, how about we do it there, just that one on its own. A motion would be to approve pending review, and if not, it has to come back next month. Is that fair?
That's fair.
You
I
make that
think I'll
motion?
vote no just because I had the request from the citizen.
No, vote yes to, oh, I see what you're saying. You'll vote no on this one right here. Okay.
Yes.
All right, understandable. Is there a motion, Mr. Seroy, a second? Anyone, Mr. Byrne? All those in favor of just that appointment by itself? Those opposed?
No.
So noted. Okay, and then we'll check that out, and then, did the individual, they expressed interest just because they saw this on here today?
No, they had seen it previously. They spoke to me previously.
Oh, they knew about the passing. Okay, because if we didn't announce it, I was wondering how they knew. Okay. Okay, the next one's the appointment of Joe Swanson to the University of Illinois Extension. Appointment of Dave Barron to the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Appointment of Robert G. Parkinson to the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District. Reappointment of Dave Sargent to the Cabri Area Fire Protection District. Reappointment of Donald B. Forberger to the Moments and Yellowhead Drainage District. And so a motion to combine and approve those. Mr. Hess, second. Mr. Payton, any questions? Mr. Barron is here if you want to grill him about any of those. He's going to be taking my place on the CVB, so that's I couldn't think of a better person to represent the county's interest there. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Announcing openings. One opening on the BM Lewis Drainage District, one opening on the Grinnell Special Drainage District, one opening on the Gar Creek Drainage District, two openings on the Mantino number 3 Drainage District, one opening on the Mantino number 9 Drainage District, one opening on the Minnie Creek Drainage District, one resident opening on the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board, one opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I guess, Mr. Quinn, would we put the opening on the full board agenda if in fact that it wasn't announced? And so then we could come back next month and I will give both applications to this committee, if there's two, and let you decide how that is gonna shake out. So if there is two people, we will do it that way. Does that sound fair? Okay. And maybe we'll invite both of those gentlemen here to answer questions that we may have, so. Or if it is a woman, I'm sorry, it could be a woman that wants that position as well. Old business, Kankakee County Cupcake Ordinance. Mr. Hess, you brought that up? Is, I'm sorry. Mr. Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, I brought up how the Village of Bradley passed a local home kitchen ordinance, and I mentioned I would bring it before the committee this month and have the ordinance sent to the committee members before the meeting to look at. If anything today, I just request maybe we could have the state's attorney's office look at this ordinance to see if we could craft something perhaps to bring to next month's meeting that we could vote on, that we could incorporate in throughout the entire county, the unincorporated part of the county that the county code oversee.
Okay. So just to paraphrase, you want to revisit it based on what Bradley has passed, and to see if this committee would send it to the state's attorney to craft something to be considered at the next meeting.
We can model it after the Village of Bradley's ordinance to incorporate within the county code. And as we've been promoting agritourism and we've been promoting business throughout the county the last few months, I mean, it's, in my opinion, it'd enable people to perhaps supplement income, enable people to perhaps start a small business that could eventually morph into a brick and mortar business. If it's good for Bradley, why isn't it good enough for the rest of the county?
Sure. Mr. Kinzinger, you have questions or comments?
I read the Bradley ordinance and consider a gaping hole in which all of us may fall into. In running for this position, I was amazed at the number of pets that live with people. One of the things that's for the protection of the county is a health department, which businesses pay $300 a year to be inspected once, and then at any time that the health department seems or deems it necessary. We allow one cupcake can do more damage unmonitored, unchecked, than anything else we can do. I am not opposed to people baking in their homes, giving me pie or cake or whatever they want to give me. But if we allow them to charge, the public has the right to assume that certain safety things have been met. Now, the Village of Bradley does address training, but it doesn't address production. I think there's a gaping hole.
Okay. Mr. Olthoff, did you have something as well? I thought I saw you.
I was just wondering if, thank you, Chairman. I was just wondering if Bradley had this examined by any legal office that would have an input.
I may know somebody who might have some insight on that. Lori Gadboy may have some history on that. Thank you.
I'm speaking to you as a former trustee today, but while I was serving on the village board, I was the one that initiated this coming forward. And yes, our legal counsel did review the content of the ordinance. We worked on it through our ordinance committee, back and forth several times with the health department, and felt coming forward with the document in front of you was fair and equitable, allowed oversight but not big brother government honing in on home bakers. Home bakers are not out there advertising and marketing like a brick and mortar store does. Home bakers have you and me and our neighbor down the street who patronize them, use them for various different things. There is restrictions and requirements in terms of labeling and ingredients. There's restrictions regarding types of products that they can actually make and sell. And there's a responsibility in Bradley. You have to have your food safety handling course, which we hope that will give them the opportunity to realize if they do have puppies and kitties that they shouldn't be in the kitchen. Other than that, then the proper handling of the ingredients and products to make their home baked goods, as well as then reporting to the Department of Revenue. We felt we actually really covered everything.
Thank you for that. And was it approved by any state agency?
Excuse me.
Was it approved by any state agency?
Well, our ordinance, actually our ordinance derives from a state statute that was created for the home bakers, or for the Home Kitchen Act.
Home Kitchen Act.
And I actually spoke with the legislator who actually initiated this, kind of tying it all in with the farmers markets and stuff. And it was brought to my attention that there is going to be more restrictions and information coming out within the next 2 years regarding this. So it's going to be an ever-changing type of legislation.
You're saying more restrictions from the state, right?
I'm sorry?
More restrictions from the state.
Well, it sounds like that's what they're trying to make good and healthy and responsible. I'm not going to say they're restricting and tying your hands, but I think they're thinking about the end user in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hess.
Lori, I don't
Yes.
see anything in here about the $1,000 a month that they have to.
Because that is in the statute, that's an automatic. That's between them and the Department of Revenue, that they know that they have to adhere to. And one of the other things, before you can even get your business license in the Village of Bradley, you have to show us you're registered and you've taken the food handling class. And you do register them with the Village of Bradley. I think they pay a $50 fee. Mr. Washington, do you have a question? No? Okay.
Any other first-time questions? So if there was a motion, it would be to see what the county's resolution would look like to bring back for consideration. You're not voting to support or deny today. It's to send it that direction.
Yes.
and then amendments and additions and deletions can be debated on the floor at that time. I think that's what Mr. Byrne is asking.
Yes.
So the motion is with Mr. Byrne and second is with Mr. Payton? Okay. I want to make sure I got that. Mr. Byrne, last time.
Okay,
No.
thank you. Thank you.
I'm
Last
just
time.
kidding.
To answer the question about safety, I asked Mr. Beavis multiple times if he could bring an instance where Home Cupcake, there was an illness, and there was, in the history, there's never been one. And again, it comes down to consumer choice. Who are we to tell a consumer what to do and where to purchase? I mean, you have a choice. I mean, if you are afraid of perhaps getting sick from a animal in the house, don't purchase your cupcakes from there. Go to a brick and mortar. It should be about consumer choice, not government telling you what you can and cannot do.
Alrighty, any other thoughts on the process? Everybody clear on that? So we'll come back next month if you so choose, so. Mr. Seroy,
Mr. Chairman, is Mr. Beavis going to be involved in this process?
he could not be here today, but I'm sure he would have something to say about it.
I would make sure that Mr. Beavis was involved in the writing of this ordinance, or help with the writing of the ordinance.
He's gonna be involved, but I wanna let the lawyers be the lawyers.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's a
at
part,
least have
yeah.
some input in this.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get his chance, believe me. Yeah, he's, and he was involved in Bradley as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like this was all done outside of him, so. Okay, we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor of the motion to send it for legal review and drafting and all that, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? One nay, Mr. Kinzinger. All right, the motion carries, and we'll revisit this next month. All right, I think, did we get through the agenda? Is that it? Any other business, new business? Mr. Hess? There is a motion to adjourn on the floor. Would there be a second to that? Mr. Washington, all those in favor of adjourning? Those opposed? Have a great day.